It was the coldest day of winter, the kind of cold that bit into your bones and refused to let go. Snow fell in thick, heavy sheets that blurred the streetlights and muffled the sounds of the city. In a run-down neighborhood on the edge of town, a teenage girl named Emily hurried home from her shift at the diner. Her coat was thin and worn, patched so many times it barely held together. She wrapped it tighter around herself, teeth chattering, but she pressed on. She had to get home to her sick mother, who lay in bed coughing, the rent overdue, and medicine nearly gone. Life had been cruel, but Emily's spirit remained unbroken. She held on to hope with a fierce determination, her eyes shining with stubborn light even in the darkest times. As she walked past the cracked storefronts and snow-choked alleyways, she suddenly heard something, soft crying. She paused, listening, and then saw him, a small boy, no older than 5 or 6, standing on the icy sidewalk alone. He wore clothes too thin for this weather. His little hands were red and raw, and tears ran down his cheeks as he sobbed uncontrollably. Emily looked around in alarm. There was no adult in sight. No one seemed to care. People walked by quickly, heads down, trying to escape the cold without sparing the boy a glance. Emily's heart twisted painfully. She couldn't just leave him there. Ignoring her own freezing limbs, she rushed to his side and knelt in the wet, icy slush. "Hey, sweetheart," she said gently, voice shaking. "Where's your mommy or daddy?" The boy could barely speak through his sobs, only managing to say he didn't know where they were. His eyes were wide with terror. She felt the wind cut through her clothes like knives, but she knew what she had to do. Without hesitating, Emily slipped off her own tattered coat and wrapped it carefully around the boy, pulling him close to her to share what little warmth she had left. She stroked his hair and murmured soothing words, ignoring the freezing wind on her own back. Her entire body shook from the cold, but she held him tighter, determined to keep him safe. In that moment, nothing else mattered. Emily had nothing, but she gave him everything she could. Emily knelt on the icy sidewalk, the cold seeping into her bones as she looked at the shivering little boy in front of her. His face was red and wet with tears, nose running, eyes wide with fear. She reached out a trembling hand, her voice soft but firm despite the freezing wind. "Hey, sweetheart," she said gently, trying to calm him. "Where's your family? Where's your mom or dad?" The boy hiccuped through sobs, shaking his head helplessly. I don't know," he managed to choke out, his voice thin and cracking. Emily felt her heart squeeze painfully in her chest. The wind howled around them, sharp as knives, tearing at her thin clothes. She glanced down at her coat. The only thing protecting her from the cruel winter night. It wasn't much, but it was all she had. She thought of her sick mother waiting at home, of how she needed to stay warm herself. But the boy's desperate, lost eyes made the choice clear. Without a second thought, Emily slipped off her coat and wrapped it around his tiny shoulders. He flinched at first, startled by the sudden warmth, but then he clung to it with trembling fingers. "Don't be scared," she whispered, pulling him close against her. "I'll keep you warm." She held him tightly, trying to share every bit of heat from her own shivering body. The wind whipped at her thin clothes, biting into her exposed skin, but she didn't move. Around them, people hurried by without so much as a glance, eager to get home, too busy or too cold to notice or care. But Emily stayed. She ignored the freezing pain spreading through her, focused only on keeping the boy safe. Her arms were numb, her lips turning blue, but she refused to let go. In a world that seemed too busy to care, Emily made the choice to be there for someone who needed her most, even if it cost her everything. Minutes dragged on like hours as Emily sat huddled on the frozen sidewalk, clutching the boy against her chest. Her fingers had gone numb, her legs trembling uncontrollably. Every gust of icy wind cut deeper than the last, but still, she didn't move. The boy had stopped crying, nestled quietly against her, his breathing shallow but calmer now. She whispered soft reassurances through chattering teeth, trying to stay awake, trying to stay strong, for him. Just when her strength began to waver, headlights sliced through the snowstorm. A sleek black car came to a sudden halt in front of them, tires skidding slightly on the icy street. The door flew open and a tall man in an expensive wool coat jumped out, his face twisted in panic. His eyes scanned the sidewalk until they locked onto the small boy in Emily's arms. "Daniel!" he shouted desperately, his voice sharp with fear. The boy's head shot up at the sound. "Daddy!" he cried, wriggling from Emily's arms with sudden energy. The man rushed over and scooped his son into a tight embrace, holding him close, kissing the top of his head, relief crashing over him like a wave. Emily stared, barely able to process what was happening through the fog of exhaustion and cold. Her body was shaking violently now, but a soft smile formed on her pale lips as she watched the reunion. The boy was safe. That's all that mattered. The man looked down at Emily, noticing her shivering frame, her frostbitten hands, and the fact that his son was wearing her coat. His eyes widened, not just in realization, but in disbelief and deep gratitude. This girl, a complete stranger, had risked her own health to keep his son warm. In that moment, he saw her not just as a poor, trembling teenager, but as a quiet hero. The man turned toward Emily, still holding his son tightly against his chest. Snow clung to his dark hair, melting in the heat of panic now slowly giving way to relief. His eyes shone with raw gratitude, and his voice cracked as he spoke. You saved my son. He wandered off while we were shopping. We've been searching everywhere. I can't thank you enough." Emily managed a faint, tired smile. Her lips were nearly blue from the cold, her breath coming in ragged clouds. "He was freezing," she whispered, voice hoarse. I couldn't leave him like that." She shivered violently, wrapping her thin arms around herself now that she was bare to the wind. The man's gaze fell to the oversized coat wrapped around his little boy. It was old, patched in places, clearly not meant for the wealthy. He realized with a jolt that it had been hers. She had given up the only thing keeping her warm just to save his child. The boy clung to it, snuggling gratefully into its worn fabric, blissfully unaware of what it had cost her. The man's eyes filled with something heavier than gratitude, understanding. Guilt, too. He wore a designer coat worth more than she likely made in a month. Behind him sat his sleek black car, waiting with heated seats. And here was this girl, clearly poor, shaking so hard her teeth chattered, who hadn't hesitated to sacrifice her own comfort for a stranger's child. He swallowed hard. It hit him that no amount of money, no privilege or status, could buy the kind of heart she had. She hadn't done it for thanks or reward. She'd done it because it was right. Because she couldn't stand to see a child suffer. In that moment, the millionaire who owned the giant company on the edge of town felt small in comparison to the young girl in front of him. All the wealth in the world couldn't measure up to the kindness and selflessness she had shown that night. Days later, Emily sat quietly by her mother's hospital bed, the hum of machines and the sharp scent of antiseptic surrounding her. She clutched her mother's frail hand, trying to stay strong despite the fear gnawing at her insides. The doctor's words still rang in her head, the treatment was expensive, and they didn't have the money. She felt the weight of it all pressing down, her stomach tight with worry. She didn't notice at first when the door swung open with sudden force. She blinked in surprise as the man from that snowy night walked in, wearing the same fine coat, but now his face was calm, almost glowing with relief and purpose. In one arm, he carried a thick, brand-new winter jacket in a cheerful color. In the other, he held a white envelope. Emily stood, startled, but before she could speak, he gently draped the warm new coat over her shoulders. She felt its soft, heavy warmth immediately, such a stark contrast to the chill she'd carried for days. Then he pressed the envelope into her shaking hands. She opened it slowly, eyes widening as she saw the thick stack of bills inside. Enough to pay the hospital. Enough to keep them safe for months. Enough to breathe again. Tears filled Emily's eyes and spilled freely down her cheeks. Her voice broke as she whispered, "I didn't do it for this." She was shaking for a different reason now, overwhelmed, her heart aching with the rawness of gratitude and humility. The man smiled gently, eyes kind, a hint of his own emotion making his voice softer. "I know," he said simply. "That's exactly why you deserve it." Emily collapsed into grateful sobs, clutching the envelope and new coat as if they were life itself. Her mother stirred, reaching out to hold her hand, their eyes meeting with unspoken love and relief. And as the man quietly stepped back, watching the small family hold each other close, the narrator's words echo in the mind, "One act of kindness can change a life forever." In a world that can be cold, be the warmth someone needs.